Can you hear us?
She doesn't have her mic on.
All right, welcome everybody to the regular stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the meeting for Thursday, December 21st, 2023. This is to informally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. The Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. All right, so just so everybody understands again, this is the Yarmouth Conservation Commission meeting. We have a quorum. We have 3 people present in the hearing room here, and Commissioner Lawrence has somehow pulled herself out of her funk here and has graciously accepted our invitation to be our 4th of the quorum. So I appreciate it, Ellie, for showing up and giving that second effort. We'll move right into the first order of business, which is a request for determination of applicability. This is BSC Group for Dana Spada, 70 Breezy Point, proposed addition within the riverfront area land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. Karen.
Good evening, Chairman Hoops, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owners at Spadas who are with me tonight. If you have any questions, also with me is the builder on the project. So what we have is a small addition that we're looking to put adjacent to the existing house. A small portion of that will be an existing addition that's going to be removed, and then we're going to build this on the side of that building. We're keeping it as far away from the wetlands as possible. You'll see that there's a septic system and a shed and other items behind us, between us and the run, the creek. We have proposed 2-to-1 mitigation for the amount of disturbance that we're doing. We're going to have 140 square feet in the riverfront area, between the 100 and 200. There is no proposed work within the 100-foot buffer to the riverfront. On the wetland buffer, we've got 0 square feet of proposal between the 0 and 50, and we've got 110 square feet in the 50 to 100-foot area. As I said, we're proposing mitigation at 2-to-1, and we're proposing 50 square feet of plantings, which is adjacent to the wetlands at the rear of the property, over an existing lawn. There was some area in the back that was disturbed, so we're just allowing that to grow back naturally. It has been cleaned out. There was some debris in there, so we cleaned out that. And other than that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions from the board? Ellie? Okay.
No, thank you.
Brittany, anything?
No questions.
All right, anybody in the audience have any questions or comments on this project? Anybody on Zoom have any comments or questions? All right, so if not, and there's no further discussion among the board, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2 and a -3?
I'll make it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. All right, and then a roll call vote is required. Ellie?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and chair votes aye. Passes unanimously. All right,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you. All right, next order of business is a request for an extension. This is SE 83-2272, Nate Wetton, Town of Yarmouth for Higgins Kroll Road Shared Use Path. Nate, before we get to, just to save everybody a little bit of time, this is the first request for an extension, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, I mean, unless you need to really tell us anything about it, we normally would give somebody a pass on the first request, if that's okay?
Okay.
All right, is there any questions from the board? Okay.
The duration of the extension would be,
3 years. Well, yeah, we'll give it, it's the first time, we'll just automatically give you 3 years. If you come back at the end of the next 3 years, we're going to have some more questions for you at that point.
all right. Thank you, Mr.
Your
Chairman.
name is, your Nate?
I'm Nate Wetton. I'm a senior project manager with the Yarmouth Department of Public Works.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Actually, do I have a motion to approve the extension for 3 years?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Pat. All right, Ellie?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that's unanimous. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next order of business is a notice of intent. This is coastal engineering for the town of Yarmouth, 261, 275, and 281 Route 28, proposed Chase Brook Park restoration, invasive species management, and pedestrian bridge and land subject to coastal storm flowage, riverfront area, coastal bank, and the buffer zones to a salt marsh, coastal bank, and bordering vegetated wetland.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Angela Tanner from Genic Studio, Crawford Land Management, and here with me is Tori Dumas from Coastal Engineering.
I'm sorry, your,
You can't hear.
what's your name? I'm sorry, your name?
Angela Tanner,
Can you spell the last name?
Tanner. And Tori from Coastal Engineering, Dumas is the last name.
Okay.
And we are representing the town of Yarmouth. We've been working with them to plan for the restoration of 3 separate parcels into one park, Chasebrook Park. And the properties are the existing Chasebrook Park, Mill Creek Park, and then the former Yankee Village parcel, which sits between those 2 parks, which was recently demolished. And those are all located on Route 28, and they border Chasebrook and Mill Creek. There's a portion of Chasebrook which currently separates the 2 parcels of the Chasebrook Park and Yankee Village. And those 2 parks, Chasebrook and Mill Creek, which are the 2 on either end, they currently feature existing parking areas, overlook structures, concrete and asphalt path systems, which are in various states of disrepair. There's turf areas, some ornamental plantings, and then there's naturalized edges with different levels of invasive vegetation as well as native vegetation. And following the demolition of the structures and paving on Yankee Village parcel, which took up the majority of the parcel, that site is currently covered in wood chips, some invasive plantings, trash, and debris. And there is a salt marsh which borders the edges of Mill Creek at all 3 properties. And so the goal of the project is to create a more cohesive public park, which utilizes all 3 of the parcels, provides better pedestrian access within the park, areas for the public to engage with and view the waterfront, as well as restore the degraded vegetation to a more healthy, ecologically beneficial state for wildlife and the quality of the waterfront. And in order to do that, we created a new walkway system by removing the old walkway system, creating one with ADA accessible paths that will connect all 3 parcels. And this system includes a proposed pedestrian bridge, which crosses Chasebrook and would link the Chasebrook and Yankee Village parcels. The paths will be relatively flat, not exceeding a 5% slope, and they would consist of stabilized aggregate, which is a more permeable solution than the existing concrete. This will allow the pedestrians to access and enjoy all three parcels without having to necessarily walk along the busy Route 28. And the new layout also allows more direct access to the existing crosswalk that's currently on Route 28. In addition to the paths, we've provided more opportunities for seating, and this includes the renovation of the existing picnic area on the Chasebrook site and the preservation of the existing picnic area on the Mill Creek site. It also includes the preservation of the two overlooks and additional bench seating along walkways. And in order to allow the public to better engage with the waterfront, but focus the area that they would be doing that and limit foot traffic along the edges, we've proposed several stone overlook locations, which would consist of reclaimed natural stone that's dry laid. And we've also included details for a fiber roll installation where the overlook at Mill Creek meets the pathway system. There's currently a little bit of erosion there, and that is proposed only if the final installation budget allows, and it would just help to prevent further erosion while the plantings are being established. And so in addition to the pathway system and other seating areas, the main goal of the project is to restore the currently degraded vegetated communities to a more healthy system that supports wildlife. And to that end, we would be removing invasive plantings and restoring with native plantings. We would be adding a more biodiverse planting palette that'll help attract and support more wildlife. And in addition to the invasive plant removals, the design team and committee recognizes that this is a public park and it's intended for visitors of different backgrounds and interests. And one of the biggest challenges as a restoration company we find is that the public perception of naturalized areas they tend to think of them as messy. And so we tried to come up with ways that would address what the public would like to see in a maintained park, while still meeting the goals of restoring the native habitat. So in order to do that, we designated several view corridors where the taller vegetation would be managed in order to help enhance views in those locations. And those are shown with those dashed lines. There's one at each parcel. And instead of a traditional turf lawn, we've incorporated a more environmentally friendly low-growing lawn in several locations using a low-growing lawn alternative called No-Mow fescue, which is a blend of 6 different drought-tolerant fescues that don't need to be mowed on a regular basis. Not only does this type of planting not need regular maintenance, such as irrigation, fertilization, or mowing, but those practices actually do more harm to that type of plant community than they do good. It grows very lowly, it's tolerant of foot traffic, and it would help provide a more maintained open feeling to some of the areas where we have the proposed walkways, picnic areas, benches, and hopefully allow for better engagement by the public within that park system so that they have areas that they feel they can inhabit alongside the naturalized areas. This is a low budget and eco-friendly way of maintaining those areas. Also, there's an area of turf at Mill Creek that may need restoration during the construction process. So we have proposed that damaged areas are either replaced with a drought-tolerant turf grass, such as Black Beauty, or the entire area, if budget allows, would be transitioned to the No-Mow fescue. And then for the rest of the park, we've created separate areas of recognizable plant community types that are intentionally layered and woven around the edges of the parcels. For example, the existing salt marsh has Phragmites in it. The Phragmites would be treated and mowed. That would help the health of the salt marsh. It would also help the public perception of what this looks like aesthetically. We're also proposing that the restoration of the understory at the edges of the stream banks would go back to a native shrubland. While leaving all of the native trees intact, we would be removing invasive and compromised trees along both edges of Chase Brook, and on both edges of Chase Brook, we would be adding gray birch tree groves. And that would help restore a native tree canopy, but still allow for views underneath the foliage. We've also proposed large swaths of blue stem grass meadows and wildflowers on all 3 parcels with ribbons of taller switchgrass separating the shrubland from the meadows. And we have wildflowers proposed for those meadow areas that are prepared in specific mixes that would maintain a sense of order, but also provide color and pollinator opportunities through the season. And I will let Tori from Coastal Engineering present the pedestrian bridge design and add any other comments that he might have.
Currently, we're proposing to do a bridge with a 40-foot span that's only 5 feet out, 5 feet in width. The idea is to keep the bridge as small as possible so that it is not getting in the way of any of the views and used only to connect the pathways. That's really it, other than unless you have any questions.
What was the resource area that's in? Is it BVW?
Salt Marsh, Coastal Bank, Riverfront area.
The bridge is over Salt Marsh?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the profile for that? For the bridge?
What's the height of the bridge? The
Uh,
clearance?
The clearance, it's let's say they're 5 feet over the mean high water to the lowest chord.
Can you explain how the pathways have been brought up to meet the bridge in order to get that clearance?
On the right side, well, yeah, on the left side, we'll have to add some fill to bring it up to meet the bridge. On the, well, I guess on the west side. On the east side, it'll come straight across to meet it, but it'll also require some additional fill. We're not going to grade anything outside of the pathways with anything other than what is being proposed for the rest of the lawn. It'll maintain the 5 foot.
I think it's actually probably
Stabilized
it's
aggregate.
meadow and then embankment plantings. So proposed blanketing on any of the steep bank areas that are existing, but there's no proposal for additional. I think you had asked earlier about gravel. There's no proposal for gravel on the banks.
Okay, and the decking of the bridge is just planks?
Yes, wooden planks, yes.
Okay. So
But
just,
we are proposing that the spacing only be a 1/2 inch to be ADA compliant.
that's the
So we
requirement?
would be requesting a variance for that.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, that normally we would ask for 3/4, but if it's an ADA requirement, then obviously we would have to go with that.
Yes.
There's also a southern exposure there, so we're hoping that that would help.
Yeah, you're a lot,
A
I think
lot.
you're a lot more beneficial that way. Yeah. Okay. And what was the name of the lawn mix you're talking about, mill?
It's called No Mo Fescue. It's
Fescue.
by Prairie Nursery.
Okay. I mean, I know because there are a couple spots and your explanation for why you're putting it inside the 35 I understand where you're coming from with it. I get a little concerned about allowing anything that looks like just regular grass coming in, because then I'm going to have to explain it to numerous people behind you who are going to try and put a grass in the same situation.
There is a picture of it in the PowerPoint that we brought.
Which I didn't know which one.
Try the reduced one, the bottom, yeah, that one. So if you scroll towards the end, I think. No, I guess it didn't make it in there. Sorry about that. So basically, it doesn't look like a mowed turf lawn. It looks more like, you know what Penn sedge looks like, Pennsylvania sedge.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
similar to that look. Like a draping kind of soft. It's just that it grows low, which is helpful for maintaining a few open areas that people can access.
Okay. All right. Questions from the board?
I'm curious, sort of an aside, but I guess the gravel that you're talking about for the paths are pretty accepted for accessibility.
Yeah, it's basically a stabilized aggregate system. It has a binder in it.
But is there any information, research on how actually it is accessible?
Some specific resource that I can point to. I'm not sure. I would have
There
to
is.
look. But yeah, it is considered accessible.
And what is maintenance on something like that over the years?
I am not sure the time frame for when those need to be maintained. I can check into that.
But I'm just curious of the costs and how much,
The cost over time, essentially.
and what expertise is needed or equipment.
Yeah,
Not
it
just
does.
Using a hose.
It does require a little bit, I mean, it's not highly technical, but it does require people. It's basically a mix that gets applied on site. So it's an expensive, I think the installation of it is fairly expensive, obviously compared to a regular gravel path, but it definitely lasts longer and it's more stable for walking on.
So it does take some maintenance along the edges, so the erosion reduced.
Yes, it probably, without having steel edging, which would be
And you're
very
not gonna
cost
have any-
prohibitive, it may need a little bit of maintenance at the edges.
That's all I got.
Okay. Ellie, do you have any questions?
Well, the only remark I have is, I appreciate them trying to make it pretty so people know what nature looks like, unmessy, quite honestly, but, it's sanitized nature, but they're doing a good job with, their plan on having the view restored in the grass, but I do have the concerns about the fescue and the, 35 like you had. That's all I have.
I'm sorry, did you have? I'm trying to think. I think the best thing for us to do is just be to issue a finding along with the order that just calls out the no mow fescue within that 35, that it's not something that we would normally approve, but because of the situation with the public and with the how do I want to say it? The public and to address the accessibility issues, I would say we would allow it, but it's not something that we would normally consider as part of our normal mitigation. So that makes sense, Ellie?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Is that fescue area meant to be play area or just to walk from the path to those stone overlooks? Can it be a smaller area or path?
We could probably reduce the size. I think that the goal was to try to create a few areas on each site that are a little more welcoming to foot traffic. So whether it's a kid running around or just someone walking, it basically they're not going to be walking in the meadow areas, obviously. So just to give them an area to occupy without it being a high maintenance area. And in that particular location, it's one of the best opportunities to have people engaged with that waterfront.
Okay.
I think the finding will cover that, because this is not something we would normally approve under a regular notice for mitigation and that sort of thing. But I think because this is more of a hybrid issue, it's not, we're developing a park, so it's not necessarily completely conservation, but it is, I think it's addressing, it tries to address our concerns in terms of, low fertilizer, low maintenance, low water issues that are important to the commission as well. So I think as long as we issue that finding, I don't have, when I first looked at it, I was a little concerned about it, to be honest with you. And then my only other question is, like, the pavement on both sides, the parking areas at both ends are staying in the exact same.
Those are to be labeled as protect during construction and leaving those intact.
It,
I mean, yeah, Jack.
I think this might be somewhat of an opportunity to help the public get the idea of natural areas and what they want for their homes, and have some of it messy. And maybe even include descriptions of what you're doing and why it's that way.
I agree. It would be a great opportunity. I wish more people would use native plants at home.
I'm trying. But you see my point, that if you would directly address that.
Yes, I think so. I think some signage during construction could be helpful, and even after.
Okay, Brittany, anything else?
Just that we did receive DMF comment at 2 p.m. today. They would suggest a time of year restriction from, I can't remember off the top of my head, April to June, and that they mentioned the 3/4 inch spacing is usually required, and that their usual 1.5 to 1 ratio above the salt marsh is recommended, but in this scenario, the 1 to 1 ratio is what they're proposing. And we also got DEP comment, didn't make it in here, that DEP comment was the 3/4 inch spacing, but we understand because of the ADA accessibility, you need to do 1/2 inch.
Okay. Anybody in the audience? Yes, sorry, if you would just come over to the podium over here and then state your name for the record.
Andrew Laird, West Yarmouth,
And how do you spell the last name?
Laird. Is there any ways to water from this park for potential clammers? Because there's clamming in Mill Pond.
I don't think there is.
No, there aren't.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom have any comments or questions on this one? Okay, unless there's any further discussion among the board, then would somebody like to make a motion to approve with special conditions and the finding as discussed earlier?
So moved.
Pat,
Second.
thank you, Jack. Okay, Ellie?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, carries unanimously, 4-0. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.
All right, next order of business is is a continued notice of intent for SE 83-2404, Michael Toohill, Conoco Incorporated for Scott Gilmore, Town of Yarmouth, 62 High Bank Road, proposed golf cart bridge within the riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, and salt marsh.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Toohill from Conoco Engineers and Scientists, and Scott Gilmore, the superintendent of the golf course, is here as well with me this evening. When we met with you on November 16th, I think it was, we went back and took a look at the design to try to raise the bridge, which was a concern that the commission had, which we did. So we went from, I think it was 32 feet long to a 48-foot long bridge in order to be able to meet the paths further upslope on either side and build the paths up to the bridge. So the bridge is now higher above the salt marsh. We also narrowed the bridge. It's now 6 feet instead of 8 feet wide. And it's still the fiberglass reinforced polymer bridge. It's a solid decking, and I know that was a question. That's how they're built, is with solid decking. But the aspect ratio on this bridge is pretty good, because we're going to have a nice southern exposure during most of the day, because the bridge runs essentially east-west across the creek. I think those were the primary questions that the commission had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and what's the height now? Over the salt marsh, the height that you've raised it to?
It varies from 1 foot at the edge to about 4 feet as you get down towards the mean high water elevation. Because of the height of the bridge, we also had to add railings on the side of the bridge, because the bridge is now high enough that we were concerned about, and narrow enough we're concerned about cart paths going across. So as you can see in this diagram that Brittany put up, on either side of the bridge is where it meets the existing path. Actually, it's over the existing path and up into where the path was before, because the old bridge wasn't 48 feet long. This one is. So we're actually meeting the path further upslope. And we're doing a fill on either side of the path, with the path, so that we bring the path up as you come down from the tees and as you go up towards the green, we bring the path elevation up to meet the new bridge elevation. And so we'll have some vertical curbing, we call it, on either side of that path, because as you can see, there's a drop off, especially as you get over towards the green side. There's about a 3 or 4 foot drop off as you come off the bridge, off the side of the path. And we didn't want to just continue to splay out on a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 slope fill on the side, so we decided to go vertical in that place. So there'll be curbing, so the carts aren't going to go off the side, and that'll also retain the path material. But the path it's in Riverfront, but it's in previously developed Riverfront. We're on the existing path. We're not expanding beyond what was previously developed. We're no closer to the river. Matter of fact, we're further away from the river. And we've also proposed to take out some of the paths that now become unnecessary because of the bridge crossing going back in, and restore those with native vegetation, all within Riverfront.
Okay, questions from the board?
The paths that you're taking out, what were they composed of?
One is a gravel path, another is partially seashell, and there's a little piece of bituminous concrete too. In the letter that I wrote, I think I detailed out the total length of the path. It's quite a distance.
As I recall, there was some area of the path coming into the bridge that underneath there was concrete or bituminous or something.
bituminous, it's asphalt paving. So the approach coming down from the tees to the bridge was
Okay,
always
so-
asphalt paving.
So that's got asphalt on top now, we're going to,
It has right now.
and you'll maintain that.
Yes, we're actually going to go back and meet it further back along. So there's going to be a piece of area where there was asphalt before that's not going to be there now because it's under the bridge.
Yeah.
And we're going to meet it further upslope. And the other side was always seashells or gravel, and we'll maintain that.
Anybody else? Ellie, any questions, comments?
No, I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, Brittany?
Yeah, I just had some questions on your diagram that I just went away from. It doesn't show where the salt marsh is under here. And I mean, from our photos, it goes pretty much from the edges of the stream all the way up to the pathway. So I think there's salt marsh for this whole great distance, right? And you said your greatest height is how long, how high?
The greatest height?
Yeah, between the salt marsh and the bridge.
Well, the salt marsh down there is at, basically almost at elevation 0, so it's like 6 feet.
Yeah, so you only have the 5 feet of clearance right in the middle between the salt marsh and the
Right,
bridge.
and then obviously as you get towards the edge, there's less clearance.
Yeah. But the salt marsh does extend all the way out to the
Right, if you
existing
go back to
seashell path.
that diagram again for a second and go up, you can see where the salt marsh is and where the bridge is. You see the triangles, the blue triangles?
Yep.
So the bridge is actually, the ends of the bridge are outside of the delineated salt marsh area. And if you recall, some of that salt marsh vegetation is sitting on top of bituminous concrete
Yep.
right now.
Because it was previously filled for that seashell pathway.
Yeah,
And so for the slopes, the 3-to-1 slopes on either side, are those going to be seeded and blanketed, or how are those going to be?
Yes.
I didn't see that in the description. Okay.
Tim, I think the landscape architect is also on Zoom if you want to also talk to Tim Garish.
That's all I have.
I still don't like it, but anyhow. Questions from the audience? Comments?
Jay Frapery in Yarmouthport. I just wanted to make a comment that this bridge is really going to help out from a safety perspective on the course. I know the golf operations has worked really hard to try to improve safety around the golf course in general, and this is the worst of all of the safety issues. People right now are routed right down in front of a tee, and the worst thing you can do is put golfers in a situation where they're right in front of a tee. Without the bridge right now, they come down a path on the right side of that hill and have to go around the end of the marsh or the stream, which is right in front of the 12th tee, which is to the left-hand side of the green. You can see how that path comes around right there right now on the bottom. That is right underneath the 12th tee. Balls go right over people's heads. We've been fortunate so far that no one's been injured severely, and it's just a requirement that we try to improve golf safety on the golf course. So it's a really important issue to resolve that problem. In addition, those paths are created or were created to try to alleviate the problem when the bridge was destroyed several years ago, which was delayed in return. And those paths, most of them are going to be reclaimed, so they go away, and will allow you to get back a lot of the areas along the sides of the marsh. So we would appreciate it if you would take all that into consideration. It's a real big improvement and a real big safety feature to protect citizens and golfers in general. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom who wants to make a comment on this project, raise your hand digitally. Don't see anybody. All right, is there any further discussion among the board? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion then to approve the project with special conditions?
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. I'm having pen problems
it.
here.
Need another pen?
I'm having serious pen problems here tonight. Did you second, Jack? Thank you. Let's see, Ellie, thank you.
Well, I have your same concerns you do, but I don't know how they can raise it anymore without putting more fill in. They've gone as high as they can without really adding a lot. So I have to approve. I vote aye.
That was yes?
Yes, it's
Okay,
aye.
thank you. Pat?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
I will reluctantly say aye. Carries unanimously, 4-0, with special conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, next order of business is another continued notice of intent for SE 83-2403 Paul and Nancy Cruz, 52 Prince Road, after the fact filing for unpermitted patios, rinsing station, and gravel hardscape and land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the buffer zones to a coastal bank and salt marsh. I have a letter in the file from the from the Cruzes. They are working on some updates to the landscaping, and they'd like to request a continuance to March 7th, 2024. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second, thank you. Ellie?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Jack?
Yeah, aye.
Chairman votes aye, so that carries unanimously. Moving on, we have one item on enforcement for this week. It's 44 T Way. It's unpermitted regrading and landscaping walls in the buffer zone to a pond and bordering vegetative wetland. So what I'll do, first I'll ask for Benny to give us a rundown of what's going on. We'll have the board ask any questions, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Thank you.
There was a report to the building division about this violation, which is how conservation found out about it. This is located right abutting the golf course, to the north of the golf course on the pond there. And the homeowners had a failing timber retaining wall, which they had replaced with stone, and same thing with a failing timber stairway, which they had replaced with stone, as well as installation of a patio. This is all within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and the pond there. They also had done some regrading in the yard, which led to a lot of exposed soils. And historical cutting could be seen on the areas below. I did meet with them on site during the installation, and over the weekend before those big storms, they had been able to install silt fence as erosion control management, along with some jute matting on those open soils. There is a smaller retaining wall at the bottom of the slope here before the stairway. See if I can find that one. Right at the top where the silt fence is, right underneath it, there's a small wall with 2 timbers holding that slope up, and that was installed last year. I will find it.
It did not look like, yeah, I was going to say, it looks
Yeah,
like
this
it's got a
one.
lot of holes underneath it.
Where it's been undermined and recently installed. So that's what's going on at 44 T Way.
Seems like you'd have to do a little bit of engineering to that one to help that along a little bit.
The lower wall.
Yeah, that lower wall. You might have to add another course or two.
What?
You'd have to add another course
Oh.
in front, step it down in front slightly, I think, because otherwise you're just going to keep on getting, water will run under it, but I think, so, I mean, it's clearly not structural, and it doesn't seem like it's holding back a huge amount of soil or anything, but I think if they planted on top and in front of that lower retaining wall, then I think they could get, that would be something we could permit that way. I think you'd also want to, I mean, it looks like some pretty bare stuff all the way down between the pond and this lower wall here.
Yeah.
So I think that certainly needs to be restored. That area should be restored. I mean, I can still see keeping a path in there to go down to the dock, and I would imagine the pier is not permitted at any point, but it looks like it's been there for quite a while. So I'd like to see some sort of a plan, like a plot plan, or I could get a surveyor to do a plan for you, but put everything onto one plan, plant the 35-foot, restore the 35-foot, allow for a path to go through it so they can access the pier, and then permit all the other stuff in the 50 to 100, the fire pit, the walls and everything else that were done within the 50 to 100.
Through an RDA, or?
I mean, I would do it after the fact RDA, just to put it on a, like I said, I'd like to see it get put on some sort of a plan so we actually have some sort of record. And then with the understanding that any work that gets done beyond that within the 100-foot has to come back for proper permitting before, they can't just continue to do things then do it after the fact.
Mm-hmm. So the RDA would include the planting plan for everything?
I think that, I mean, as long as are you good with that?
Yeah, instead of restoration plan under the enforcement order, just an after the fact RDA with everything on
Well, I
it.
think put it all under the,
Yeah,
actually, I'm sorry, do the restoration planting under the enforcement order.
Okay.
But but the restoration area should be put on that plan as well. And then I would also mark the 35-foot with some sort of
I think that wall is pretty close.
is the wall is close to 35?
Yeah, it might be 40. Did not measure.
I think I'd mark the 35-foot, otherwise it's gonna start creeping, so.
I'm sorry, could I have your name?
Jack is the first name.
Ferdinand?
Shu is the last name. XU.
S-U? Okay.
X.
X, gotcha.
That's all my comments. Pat or Jack, any other questions or comments?
And so for the, sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No?
I'm just wondering what landscape company cut all those trees and did that work without knowledge of the being on the pond.
Yeah, how long have you been in the, how long have you owned the property?
We bought the property, it's about close to 12 years ago.
Okay, and have you had a landscape company that's doing the work for you?
Only one time they came here, there's a big tree, you can see there's a big stump right there. So during one of the winter storm, there's a big trunk, they fall and hit the house. Then we called the company, because it's a dangerous to house, they cut it.
Okay.
That's the only one.
But then you've done all the other cutting that down at the lower end of toward the pond, you cut them, or you had somebody else cut them?
The lower ending, we just, prune them.
You'd prune them?
Yeah,
Okay.
we prune them, yeah.
All right, so I assume Brittany has talked to you about the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act, that it's 100 feet, so any kind of activity that you do within 100 feet, you need to clear with conservation before you do it.
Yeah.
Some will require, formal permitting, and other things can be done through an administrative process. but-
Right, yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay.
all right. Ellie, any questions?
You're muted.
Still muted.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's a
I'm
good-
sorry, Elliot. I do not mean to be doing that for you.
It's a good thing that I was muted after what I just said, but no, no questions, thank you.
Okay. All right, so do you understand what we're going to be asking? So Brittany's going to be sending what's called an enforcement order to you. It'll spell out the certain things that you have to do. I would put standard,
Special.
yeah, I mean, I would just make sure you put dates on for completion, but everything should be done, like all the planting should be finalized by the end of May.
Okay, so what about the plans? Plans by,
Plan side, I think you're gonna have to if you get a surveyor to do it, it'll probably take a few months before, so
April?
March 30th, something like that.
Okay, we'll do March 21st for our April 4th hearing.
For the plan, and then the restoration work should be done by May 31st.
Got it.
Okay, so Brittany will send you there'll be another form coming to you called the enforcement order that will spell out all the dates and things that you have to do, you're responsible for, okay?
Thank you.
All right, and again, if you do any further work that you're doing within the pruning or anything else like that, you should come in and talk to Brittany before you do any of the work, so she can help you through the permitting process, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for coming in.
You have to do the,
Yep, so do I have a motion to issue the enforcement order?
I will.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
No.
a roll call vote?
Sorry.
Aye.
Thank you, Ellie.
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack, and chair votes aye. Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business, approval for meeting minutes for December 7th, 2023. Did anybody get a chance to read through these?
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to accept.
Okay, and is there a second? Thank you, Pat. All right, all those in, sorry, Ellie?
Aye.
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 Jack? And chair votes aye. Carries unanimously. Other business not reasonably anticipated. Anything from the board? Ellie, you're all good? Okay. It looks like we have one last item of business here. So
Yes, good evening, Jeff
How you-
Colby,
how you doing,
Public Works
Jeff?
Director. Good to see you again. I have some pictures. I know that it's kind of a last-minute item, so I don't know if you have anything for the screen.
No, they were all too poor quality to bring up, but Ed has a printout, but the other two board
oh,
members
this was
don't.
the only, I did not realize.
Because I didn't know how valuable it was. They're very small.
So as I'm sure the committee's aware, on Sunday into Monday, we had a pretty significant storm event. I think all in all, the town of Yarmouth got off pretty well compared to some other communities that I'm hearing about, but there was some very high course storm tides. We are continuing to clean up from that effort, but there are a couple of locations that we need to specifically review because of the sensitive nature. The one I'm here for tonight is with regard to Seagull Beach. Was here this summer when we were talking about the ongoing maintenance efforts, and we are developing a plan for a permit to review with you. But I'm here tonight to talk about the emergency removal of seaweed, as well as what we call the floating walkway towards the end of the walkway that goes out onto Seagull Beach. It's not permanently affixed, it really just sits on top of the sand, and because of the way the water came in, it lifted up that structure and set it back down so that it's there for handicap access permits purposes and a smooth transition to the beach. It's not that now. There's some gaps, there's a lip. It's really a hazard if someone were to try to use that. And the picture shows a little bit of that. It does show, there's 4 pictures in which I handed out. I think Brittany has those as well. It shows the very large volume of seaweed that was deposited on the walkway as well as adjacent to the walkway. And the picture on the bottom left is that floating walkway that I've talked about. That's at the very end. What we'd like permission to do is to remove the seaweed that's out there and also that floating walkway, temporarily storing that floating walkway in the parking lot until we can get the issues resolved and permitted through you with regards to the ongoing maintenance out there. That would, if it's permitted, that would be reinstalled after we have a permit but right now it's just unsafe. So we'd like to remove the seaweed as well as to remove that, what we're again calling floating walkway, and put it in the parking lot. That would require forks on a front end loader. That's how that was placed out there. There are fork pockets within each one of those very large sections of walkway. There are approximately 6 sections, about 15 feet in length, so they're quite heavy. It's not something that's easily moved, although the water did it quite easily, but for us to move that, that's what we need to do that. We also have the beach cleaner, which is winterized right now, but we can use that and bring that back out to remove the seaweed. We'd also like permission to use a mini tracked excavator to reach some of the seaweed that's adjacent to the walkway with a minimal disturbance. That's generally how we would propose to remove the seaweed in kind of difficult to reach areas. But I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have about this.
Okay, so you're going to use the front end loader to lift the floating portion, and then I assume you're just going to take it back across the beach, back out to the parking lot, right?
Exactly, and it was an attachment on the front end loader that's two forks. It fits into little pockets that are right in the middle of those sections, and it's
So
easily
you're just
lifted.
lifting that up and carrying it. So I got
Exactly.
no issue with that one. I don't have an issue with you bringing the beach rake out on the berm portion of the beach, but where Brittany's got her pointer right now, I would not like to see I don't want to see any kind of a skid steer, front end loader, bobcat, anything like that. I think that's just asking for trouble. So I would, for the rest of the beach, I could see using the beach rake. But for that area right along the walkway, I think you're just gonna have to hoof it out there with hand rakes, and I realize it's a lot of work, but I don't think I'd want to see any kind of a.
I mean, over here.
So in the larger areas where we can use the beach rake, that would be fine.
Yeah.
But occasion to the walkways to do a more manual removal.
Yeah, anything within the walkways and within that, off the walkway and to the, let's see, what's to the west, that protected area. That was the area, so it's inside the walkway to the west, which is the area where I think we had all agreed that
Yeah, all those plants had grown in.
we're not going to rake. So
Just mysteriously.
that I would say if you do that part with hand as well, if you need to do that. Although, who knows if you with some good winds and a good tide every once in a while, that might go away over the course of the winter.
Well, that's our concern for that higher area.
The beach,
This was
again, with the rake, I don't have an issue with the rake there, but
Our concern is just where the water placed this up by the walkway, that it's really not going to leave by itself.
between the walkway and the
Yeah, so this area, over the summer,
there you go.
it's
That's it.
colonized by plants. So we don't want to really damage, the dune is kind of migrating there, so we don't really want to damage that area west of the walkway. And there also was a good colony going right where this part curves past the lifeguard chair, where it was fenced in. I mean, if you could just try and
But that would fit again with we always want to we always
10
want you to
feet
stay
away
10 feet
from-
off the
yeah.
toe, from the toe of the dune, 10 feet from the toe of the dune. So if you did that with the rake, then leave everything else, and that would be good because it'll help build the fore-dune area as well then.
I don't think we're as concerned about those areas that Brittany just identified. There's a little bit of seaweed in there. It really is the heavy buildup is adjacent to the walkways. It's in some cases about 12 inches deep.
And do
Yeah,
you usually move that floating walkway away for the winter, or it's always left?
We don't,
there?
it's always left there.
So
But
are you
that's a good
removing it?
example, that last straight section that goes from the last bend all the way out to kind of a more square sitting portion, I guess you could say. That's all what we consider the floating walkway. It just sits there, but it's year-round.
And just what is the purpose of removing it now? Is it unstable and you want to reinstall it in the spring?
Yeah, we'd like to reinstall it. Now's not the time to do that, but there's just large gaps between the sections now.
Okay.
And it's actually, the first section is about 6 inches above where is the fixed portion. So it really is
Okay.
a trip hazard and kind of unstable for the entire section
Got it.
from that curve all the way out. So it's just, something needs to be done. Our suggestion is just to remove it for the winter. But we don't typically do that.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're clear on that, like hand stuff along the walkway, nothing in that squared off portion where there's plantings or where the plants were already starting to come in, and then beach rake everything else on the regular berm.
Okay.
I can send that to you as well.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sound good?
Yeah, I guess maybe you're going to remove that walkway in the future.
Well, we were talking about ideas on what that might look like for reinstallation, and obviously we have to come back to you to talk about that, but I don't think there's a need for that length of walkway in the future. Again, it's from that last curve to the end. It seems to be longer than it's necessary. It does provide a smooth handicap transition to the beach, but we can also do that with the Moby mats that we have that do come in on a seasonal basis. So maybe potentially a couple of sections in the future of that kind of floating, more fixed transition, and then the Moby mats for the remainder. That's kind of what we're thinking. We need to work those details out and bring them back to you, but that's kind of what we're thinking. Not not reinstalling that entire length in the
Those
future.
are what do you call Moby mats? Is that what
They're
you
more
call
of a fiber mat.
plastic?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hardened plastic, rubberized stuff. It's like, I know the National Seashore uses a lot of them at their beaches now. to
Right,
get
and we have
people
money
over.
for new sections of that and reinstalling some of where we have currently the Moby mat, and then using some of the,
Yeah, I think it
per
would make it a
sections
lot
here,
easier.
right.
I mean, because I will also tell you that walkway at various times of the year can become quite slippery. Because, I mean, I walk out there quite frequently, but especially in the morning time, early morning, it can get really nasty and slippery, especially if you've got a dog with you, but.
right. I think that Moby mat does address some of that.
I think
It's a
that
much
would make a
better
big
product. We
difference.
didn't have it before, and
Yep.
years ago when they reconstructed this, they just used the same product they had before.
Yeah, I think it would make a big difference that way.
And the access is through this gated wide pathway for the machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Ellie, I'm sorry, did you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. I understand why they want to remove the seaweed around where the walkway is for removal of that, but wouldn't the seaweed on the other part of the beach where they're proposing to rake, wouldn't that help stabilize it for the winter, for any other storms? It would stabilize the sand and have the sand build up on it and then have more build up. If we rake it, it's sort of becomes a barren area where the sand can blow around. Wouldn't you want to keep it there? Nobody's there sunbathing in the winter. I can understand it in the summer, but to me, I would just leave it there and let Mother Nature keep the sand. That's just my thought.
I mean, it is an excellent point.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you. I guess I'm not going to argue I agree.
I mean,
I mean,
I
I do know.
understand it around the walkway because they have to do maintenance there, but I just nobody's sunbathing, nobody's complaining about it. They're not gonna. It's not gonna bother anything, and it may help the birds in the spring.
Yeah, the
Just
only
my
thing I get
thoughts.
concerned about is if we leave it like that over the winter time, and I'm with you on it, but if we leave it over the winter and more sand gets deposited on top, my only concern is, are we going to have an issue in the spring when plovers and terns are starting to come back, and then people are going to be walking and sinking an ankle deep in. Because I know that does happen at the far end of the beach. Like it does. There's a lot of weed underneath it. And so I guess my thinking on it is that I'd rather see them remove it and let the tides play with what happens over the course of the wintertime, rather than having to. I guess my concern is I don't want to see an emergency coming into us in April saying, oh, now we left all of this stuff there and the sand has been, 3 inches of sand have been deposited on top of it, but now it's like a spongy mat
sandwich,
all the
right.
way across, and we're going to want to remove that because of the sand, the sunbathers that are coming in May, so.
From a practical standpoint, now is the time to remove it if we're going to remove it because of that sand buildup. We're starting to see that in some of that area already, just in a couple of days. So if we were to leave it for a few months, that would become, much more difficult with, 6 inches of sand on top of it. It becomes more of a excavation activity than a simple raking.
Yeah, I think that's my only, like I said, I mean, I'm, me, Ellie, I'm more for just leaving everything be natural, let the whole thing. A beach is supposed to be stinky. It's supposed to have seashells. It's supposed to have seaweed and everything else. But that's my only concern with it. So I guess if the town wants to do it and they want to incur the expense of doing it,
And
Is it really a walking problem? You sink in that sand. That's a pathway, part of the pathway. People get into it, or are they not supposed to be in that area?
no, they're not really, they're supposed to stay on the path through this area, but it is a lot. And I just had a question about disposal. Are you taking it to the disposal center or?
We're still working through the details of that. My primary interest would be to bring it and, compost it with the leaves and yard waste. I know in the past, there's been some concerns from our health department about that, so I do need to work with them and make sure they're comfortable with that arrangement, but that's my preference would be to do that, yes.
Okay, if anything, I'm going to put disposal off-site on my approval. If
Yes,
anything
absolutely.
changes, please let me know.
It will be off-site, absolutely.
Okay. And this would be a single-time approval. If we have another storm, you probably can come back again. Or if it's similar enough, I can ask the board and do an admin review.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we've had water and
Yeah.
seaweed that high up on the beach.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue. I mean, you were already starting to get a winter beach developing, and then you just had what was it,
Yeah.
southeast winds that
Took it.
chunked everything in there. I mean, normally the southeast winds are here in the summertime, but we have a summer beach developed at that point too, so. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm good with it. I guess that if you want to follow those parameters, I'm good with the once and done thing. Everybody else good? Do we need a vote on that, or?
I mean, I would.
Okay. Vote to issue with the conditions already issued. Is there, well, I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Ellie?
With a reluctant aye.
I'm with you.
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
I will also give a reluctant aye, but aye it is. So it carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Anything else? Any other business?
No business. See you next year.
See you next year. Ellie, thanks for
Thanks for being a
being
trooper.
a trooper and
Feel
coming
better.
in. Nobody ever likes to come in when they're sick, but
I won't thumb my nose at COVID anymore after this one. I've had it 2 times, and this one just knocked me out.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's what I keep hearing.
So, Happy New Year.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
Have as
all
well as
right, Ellie.
possible.
Thanks again for being a trooper there. We appreciate it.
All right.
So do all the people who we could move off the agenda. So,
thanks again.
all right. If nothing else, then I'm just going to use my authority as the chair and say I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at
Oh, yeah.
6:24.
What is it?